Hey, I'm Decathlon Gamer, and this is the weekly review special for week 22 of the Gaming Decathlon competition. This week I brought in 2,440 points, a little bit of a drop from last week, but after a couple of games, wrapped up a season. The significant drops from those made sense on why the overall drop, but otherwise, the other scores were on their way up. Best round score 2,691 remains the same. That was back in week 8 here in the second year of the Gaming Decathlon competition. And I remain close to that, just 250 points shy. I could see that score eclipsed here any week now. It would be lovely to see a score break the 3,000 mark. That's my goal. The current virtual best, the combined score of all 10 games right now, the best scores they've ever had, is itself only slightly above 3,000 at 3,275, and the all-time virtual best remained unchanged this week. My top 3 games, the only ones inside the top 10 overall, none of those saw an increase. So it remains at 5,328. Looking at the 10 games individually, Imperator Rome, big mover this week, almost doubling its score, adding 30 to its total, now at 65. That game is now about a month into its series. Draft Day Sports College Basketball, 330 points this week. That was one of the ones that reset. Saw a bit of a drop. New season now underway, but only partway into that season. Good start. Could see a good score by the end of the season on that one. Be nice to see it break 500 finally, as we've inched closer and closer and closer to that mark, and now we're literally just one win off that mark. So any increase in score would see it break that landmark of 500. Draft Day Sports College Football. So this is the one that saw a pretty big drop off, new season. And unlike the college basketball one that sees a carryover in the score season by season and you build on the dynasty, this one is trying to put together the perfect season. So every season is going to reset to 0. And I have not had my first game of the new season yet, though we are ready. We are all set for that. And we'll see the season get started in the next episode next week. Motorsport Manager, 162 points now. Just a couple races from the end of the current season, so we're going to see that one reset here pretty soon as well, but not a massive score to drop off. Next season, I have high hopes. We're 5th in the Constructors right now, hanging on for above Ferrari of all teams. It's amazing that they are only 6th in the Constructors. They've had a really rough season. I'm hoping that next season, with the increased budget, I'll be able to get the car actually to B midfield, and hopefully we can then start finishing inside the top 10 regularly. Not just occasionally, but regularly, and maybe see us hit about 4th place in the Constructors a season from now, but definitely a higher score, closer to that 305 mark. Pro Cycling Manager in the career mode, continuing to evolve, continuing to grow, continuing to do well. Just had a top 25 at the World Tour race, the Amgen Tour of California. Very nearly had a top, 5 in that race. So stinking close. Top 25 was still good. We had a 2nd place in a stage, and then the Tour of Norway. We did manage a top 10 and a stage win there, so that was nice. We haven't had very many wins this season, even though I'm now setting records as it's top 10 after top 10 after top 10 at races that are more prestigious, more competitive, that have higher scoring results than a season ago when I was in the Continental Division. So Pro Continental definitely paying off. Still only 155 though. We've got a long ways to go on the season. In the Pro Cyclist mode, we're at 652 points now. 100 points higher? 200 points higher than just recently. And that's because we're now rolling into the Tour of Spain, La Vuelta. I think. Oh gosh, I'm not even sure where I'm at on that series at this exact moment. But we are definitely finding some success. I have recorded ahead on that one, primarily because we are now just 3 weeks away from the launch of Pro Cycling Manager 2019, which I will be picking up. And my Pro Cyclist mode for this season, for 2018, is going to wrap up, and I'm going to have it wrap up just before the 2019 edition starts. Now, the career mode, I'm going to keep that series going. When 2019 comes out, I will have an additional career mode series, so I'll have 2 active series at once, and a new Pro Cyclist series will ensue with the launch of that. So I'll actually have 3 series related to Pro Cycling Manager, 1 for the 2018, 2 for the 2019 going on. But anyway, I have recorded up in all the way to the end now, so I know exactly how many episodes I have to fit in. So that one I'm a bit ahead on. Not quite sure where I'm at, but I think I've started La Vuelta. Football Manager 2019 and NBA 2K19 had the week off. Dirt Rally saw its season come to an end so freaking close. Really irked me that I just missed out on points in the last race. 2 placings below, just a few seconds out of the placings. And I did really good. I had 1 mistake that cost me 10 seconds in the race. And otherwise, I was competitive. I was right there in the mix the whole way. And I missed points by 8 seconds. 9 seconds, whatever it was. It was ridiculously close. F1 2018 career mode was active this week. Had another race. I was looking at 8th place. Should have had 8th place. Or 9th place. Sorry, 9th place. I was comfortably between 8th and 10th. I had 3 mistakes on the first lap. Super costly. Had to pit. Had to put a new wing on. Went the whole rest of the race on the soft tire compound and ran through. Got back up into 9th and should have finished there. I mean, that was it. Should have been 9th. But I was on the final race that the current gearbox was needed. I was only at 66% wear entering the race, which means the gearbox was in pretty good shape. I mean, if you have 100%, you have 6 races, right? 66% is a good spot to be in terms of the wear. Yet halfway through the race, had problems. And those problems persisted for 5 laps, over a third of the race. I couldn't shift up or down. Horribly unresponsive. I was barely getting any shifting. And I dropped from 9th to the last car running. And just as I became the last car running, it finally resolved itself. And just for the final few laps, I was able to run normally. Picked up a couple places, finished outside of the points. So I ran well in Hockenheim, ended up with no points, thanks to a gearbox issue. So, woe is me, I suppose. It was a good race nonetheless, just without points. Now, each week I've been featuring one game and some sort of analysis on how it works. No graphic for it this time, but Pro Cycling Manager. So, quick explanation of how that one works, because an explanation is all that is necessary. In the career mode, I use Super Prestige and divide that score by 10. So I have 1,554 points for the team in the Super Prestige category. I divide that by 10, that's 155. That's simple. I round down. So 1559 would still be a 155. 1560 would be 156. Now, the Super Prestige, well, there's 3 ways that the game, and in real life, the World Tour, the UCI World Tour, do their scoring. You have the actual UCI, or the World Tour. So the World Tour has its own scoring system, and you're ranked only for World Tour events. Everything else, whether it's Pro Continental or Continental, has its own scoring system that only applies to Continental and Pro Continental. World Tour racers are not eligible for points in that. So any scoring they do there doesn't count. And then that's only scored for those Continental Pro Continental races. Which means there's segregation. There's a separation in those scores. The one that is inclusive of all is Super Prestige. All races, regardless of your status of World Tour, Pro Continental, or Continental, all of those races have a score that is Super Prestige. And the Super Prestige, because it brings all three categories together, that is the one that I use. Because then it does not matter what status you have, does not change. They are all scored accordingly. But they are weighted. They are weighted low to high. Continental, very small points in the Super Prestige. The Pro Continental are rated a bit higher. And then as you get into the World Tour, there's a full range of variation on how they are scored based on the prestige of the event. So new World Tour events, like the Amgen Tour of California that I just finished up in career mode, is rated a bit lower. Still higher than the Continental Pro Continental races because it's a World Tour event, but not that high. However, it's a stage race. So a one-day classic is rated quite a bit lower than a stage race is. But then the monuments, the classics that are the long-standing, the super ones, Liège-Bastogne-Liège, Paris-Roubaix, as examples, they are worth a lot of points because they are special. But then, 3 tours are the Grand Tours. And they are rated much higher than everything else. So, La Vuelta and the Giro d'Italia, so Tours of Spain and Italy, those rate very, very high. But even higher than those two, which those two have identical scoring systems, the highest of all, the Grand Tour of Grand Tours. And if you've only ever seen one bike racing event, you had to have at least heard of, if not the one you ever saw, was the Tour de France. Now, if you're an American like myself, and you're just old enough, you know the name Lance Armstrong, 7-time winner. Now, he's been stricken from the record books due to doping, but everybody was doping in his era. 90% of them were doping. So, congrats to the 10%. But everybody who finished 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th behind Lance Armstrong, they were all doping too. So, he is Voldemort in bike racing. He who shall not be named. But, yeah, I went there. I named him Lance Armstrong. He won 7 times. Yes, doping. Big asterisk by his name. Not even in the record books. Not mentioned by anyone, which is dumb, because Alberto Contador was a doper too. And they only took one of his titles away. Not all 7. Lance Armstrong never even got caught. Never got tested positive. It was after his career was done. Anyway, enough said on that topic. If you know one race, it's the Tour de France. If you know one name, it's Lance Armstrong. Or others. Like I said, that's if you're American. Outside of America, it's a sport that's far more popular. Not as much as football, aka soccer. But it's definitely up there. Much higher on the list than it is in America. So I am a rarity. But I will tell you that it's he who shall not be named, Lord Voldemort, Lance Armstrong. He's why I know the sport. I grew up watching him win the Tour. And the Tour de France was the only televised event in America. And we were only catching the end of stages and I was only getting to see a handful of stages because I got my dad to turn it on for a while, and I watched it as a kid. But I saw most of those 7 tour titles. And then things started falling apart in the US. Coverage went away. But it's back. But the viewership is much, much smaller than it was back then. And knowledge of the sport, much smaller. Anyway, Super Prestige takes all of those. The Tour de France, the other Grand Tours, the Classics, the Monuments, the World Tour, the Pro Continental, Continental races, puts them all together. You're replacing your stage wins, your sprint jerseys, your mountain points, your under 25s doesn't count, but everything else. Puts it all together, lumps it in. Now, in the career mode, I take all of the points earned by the team. All of it. Divided by 10. In Pro Cyclist, it's one rider versus a whole team. I don't count the team because I'm doing one rider's career. I divide it by 5. That is both tougher and easier. It only takes half as many points to get to 1,000, the objective. But it's one rider and not a full team. So it's both harder and easier to get to 5,000 points as it is to get to 10,000 points. It's harder because it's one rider to get those 5,000 while I have a full team at my disposal to get 10,000 in the career mode. So it's much harder. But at the same time, it's easier. Because in real life, 1, 2, or 3 team leaders get the vast majority of your points. So it's entirely plausible for one rider to get half of your points at season's end. Hence, the divide by 5 for my Pro Cyclist mode, and divide by 10 for the career mode. That explains it, that breaks it down, and so ultimately I'm looking for 5,000 in the Pro Cyclist and 10,000 in the career mode. And that Pro Cyclist, with my expert top World Tour rider, stage racing specialist, Grand Tour specialist, been to all 3 Grand Tours. I won La Vuelta last year. I finished 2nd in the Giro this year. Finished 11th at the Tour de France. Not a good race. But it's possible. I could. I'll win at La Vuelta again. 2 podiums in 2 of the Grand Tours. Lots of other wins throughout the season. It could happen. I'm at 652 right now. I got 854 last season after winning La Vuelta. That's awfully close. It could be the first game where I hit 1,000. But it's definitely going to be tight. If I had won the Tour de France, I would have made it easily. I definitely would have made it to 1,000 this season. But after finishing 11th, I don't know. But anyway, that's the breakdown of both of those games. And it'll be the same as I go into the 2019 edition. The only thing different is I am turning up the difficulty. I'm going to the elite level because I've been able to do what I've done this season. So it's time to turn it up a notch, and then scoring systems going to work the same. Now, the tricky part is in real life, they've altered the scoring system for the World Tour. It's different now. We'll see if they've updated that in-game in the 2019 edition. So I'll be looking for that when it first launches. But I anticipate that the scoring system will work the same. And therefore I'll keep my scoring system same. Next week we'll review Football Manager 2019 and see how that score comes about. But that's going to do it for this review special. Thanks for tuning in, and if you stuck with me for the last 10 minutes, I appreciated that. Quick glance on the other side. No change in the top 10. No change on the 3 outside looking in, though F1 Career mode did score a few points, but no change in position. That's it. Bye for now.